All right, cool. Well, are you guys ready to talk about Project Hail Mary?
I think we are.
Good, good. Now, for anybody that cares to watch this show, I well, Saloni, you listen to the audiobook?
Correct. Yeah. I
Okay.
listened to the
S-
audiobook about a month before the movie came out.
y- Yeah, so I started it a long time ago and I got busy and I was telling Andrew that I listen to audiobooks in the car when I'm driving to the grocery store or other places because around here it's 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour to the grocery store. That's like a chapter of a book. So it was perfect to listen as I drove. Well, not long after I started doing that, my middle son started coming with me all the time, and I'd rather talk to him than listen to an audiobook, so I fell off. And then we started talking about the movie. He told me you had listened to it, you guys saw it, and he's like, you should really see it so we can talk about it. And I was like, cool. And then he was like, well, I know you listened to it and slowly listened to it. And I was like, shit, now I have to listen to it for the show. So I crammed the entire book in this last week.
Wow.
Yeah, I had a couple of days where it was on for like 4 hours while I worked and stuff, and so I'm caught up on it that way. But what I thought I really wanted to start off with, because you and I are in the same boat, I want to let Andrew go first because he has uh, the distinct advantage of having not read the book, right? So this movie is just the movie to Andrew. And so I want to see what your take is before, um, from what I heard in the pre-show before Saloni and I maybe get a little less kind with the movie. But but
All
so
right.
what'd you think, Andrew?
Honestly, I came away feeling like it was a triumph, honestly. And I think I'll start with a couple of things. Well, actually, I'll start with number one. So Saloni was all about this like thing, like all about it. Like just telling me about this audiobook, telling me, how much she loved it, telling me how the voices were done so well. And then it was just like, and trust me, I'm usually the one who's like booking things in advance and saying, hey, like, you want to go see like Stranger Things? I'm like, no, no. She was like, she came out with the phone, with the app, like we were booking this in advance. Can you go see the movie at this time? So she was excited. And obviously, it's a love language. If someone loves something, you want to like give it a shot and not dismiss it, right? So that's number one. Number two, Drew Goddard. He is a director or a writer, and he's worked on Lost. He worked on Cloverfield, and a couple other things. Oh, Cabin in the Woods. I like him. Everything his name is attached to is good. And then, of course, you've got Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, who are best known probably for the Spider-Verse films.
Mhm.
So I think there's a lot of great talent behind the scenes with this project, Hail Mary. And then of course you got Ryan Gosling, who I think is kind of having a renaissance right now. I think this is his decade right now. So yeah, no, I thought it was a very well made film. I thought that, seeing it in IMAX was definitely the way to go. Some of the shots were jaw dropping. I think that at parts for me it felt a little slow, especially during the first half, but it was a good kind of blend of like dread, but then dread turning into kind of lighthearted. I don't want to say comedy because at first when that ship appears and I'm like, oh man, like uh-oh, but then he starts moving and the ship starts moving, like that was funny. That's when I knew, okay, this is cute, right? And then it just straight up got into the heartfelt piece and like when Rocky, does his sacrifice or Rocky does their sacrificial move, when it's needed. Like that legit broke my heart. And I was like, if this had happened in the 80s or even in the 90s, I don't think things would have went the way they went in this film, because I just felt like they just would have went for the other more tragic outcome. But yeah, overall, and then the last thing I'll say is I did read somewhere that this film could be seen as an allegory for kind of like male loneliness, I guess. And
Mhm.
I know some folks like in the feed were just kind of like, like they were laughing at it. But I personally agree. I think that um, there's something to be said about bonding when alone and that, this is so weird, but like intimacy doesn't have to be always romantic. It can also be just on a soul level. And that's what we had here. So all in all, I just think from top to bottom, I was super, super happy with it. And I say that knowing that this is probably a different experience than those who read the book. But I came away. And it's the highest grossing film so far of this year. It is a non-franchise film or a non-sequel film. So it's just a victory on all levels, I think, for Hollywood, and a harbinger or harbinger or whatever you want to say for 2026 being a banner year in movies, which I've been saying for a while now.
Yeah. Yeah. Before I flip over, so I will say the one thing that made me and my son laugh is we looked at each other and laughed when the first thing that pops up on the screen is that Amazon Prime little smile thing, and it says it's an Amazon Prime movie. Because do you know what the last Amazon movie we watched was?
Of course I do. The one that got like the Razzies of the year, War of the
War of the
Worlds,
Worlds,
man.
probably the worst movie I've ever seen in my life.
Ever.
It was trying to not be the worst movie. Uh, The Room might actually be the worst movie I've ever seen, but that's a whole other conversation. Um, but yeah, that like I looked over at my son and we like literally at the exact same time. We just looked at each other and just laughed because I mean we watched War of the Worlds and we were dying. We were like, I don't know, Cube made a mistake. Like this was this was a this was a critical error in your career, my friend.
Yeah.
And so but after that, yeah, it went. It was a solid. I'll talk about it a little bit. But Salony, what was your take on the movie? As obviously someone that enjoyed the audiobook, but to the point where it obviously excited you enough that you kind of had to see the movie, right?
Yeah, I couldn't wait for the movie to be released. Actually, while I was listening to the audiobook, I avoided watching the trailer for the movie. I didn't want to spoil um, the imagination part of the audiobook and my experience with it. So it wasn't until I was done that I watched the trailer. And then, like Andrew was saying, I bought the tickets. I've never done that. I don't remember. I'm sure I've bought movie tickets in advance. I know I have done that, but I don't remember the last time I was this excited to watch a movie in the theater. And I really was. I was um, excited, and I was curious to see how they would take something that was so um, expansive and such a compelling story. And the audiobook, for example, is I think 16 hours. And
Hmm.
I haven't read the actual book, but I looked it up. I think it's like over 400 pages long. So it's a story. And so how they were able to take that and condense it into a 2.5 hour long movie. Um, so going to so just focusing on the movie, um, I there were, of course, it's hard not to have high expectations, but I knew, I mean, as always is the case, I feel like, or most often is the case, that the or the book experience translates very differently into a movie experience. And most of the time, people are disappointed if they really like a book and then they watch the movie or a show. It ends up being slightly different. For me, I liked the movie. I think it was solid, but I had mixed feelings about it. But my overall take was I liked it. The mixed feelings part, there were parts of the movie that I loved, like just how they captured this other the focus on was it Adria, the planet,
Hmm.
and that part of the movie and that mission. Andrew and I were talking about how the cinematography overall was beautiful. Even how they showed Rocky's ship, which wasn't covered in the book because the book made it like he can't, Ryland Grace can't enter Rocky's ship
Hmm.
because of the atmosphere issue. But overall, I thought visually it was very beautiful. But then there were parts of the movie that I was really annoyed with, and I was disappointed by, and I didn't like. And I also felt like they were unnecessary. Little scenes here and there that to me were like a waste. And like the scene where Ryland and I think it's the head lady, her
Hmm.
bodyguard, they're in the store, they're buying things and they're playing like bowling out of aluminum foil and things of that sort, which didn't take place in the book either, but it was just unnecessary. It was like a time waste. And I wish that the movie would have focused more on other parts, like even the beginning part of it. It was the whole buildup in the audiobook of Rylan waking up, not knowing who he is,
Yep.
where he is. And that was such a huge part of the story, building the story up to where he then is able to start remembering bits and pieces. And I understand that in a movie, because it's all condensed in a short period of time, they had to let go and make those tough calls to not overly focus on some things to keep the storyline moving. But I still think they could have done it in a way where it would have beautifully captured that and still would have portrayed the story. I think the biggest piece I was really disappointed with is that they made Ryland Grace's character, who is a brilliant scientist, they kind of dumbed him down a lot. And that I thought was pretty frustrating. I also don't know if it was really clear that Rocky, who is this brilliant engineer, if that was conveyed, because in the story, both of them are equals. Like they
Hmm.
both are equally brilliant in what they do, which makes them working together so special because they both bring in the strengths that they need. Rylan is not an engineer and Rocky is not a scientist. And so they both help each other through that teamwork to get to basically saving each other's planets.
Yep.
I do want to watch the movie again, though. I want to go back, and I even told Andrew something I've never done either is to go back to the theater to watch a movie that I've already watched, right? And if we had time today, I didn't have the time, but I would have loved to have done that for this podcast. But I still want to do it at some point, and whether it's in the theater or at home, I want to give it another shot because I want to watch it from the perspective of a movie and not from my expectation of the storyline and the background that I have with audiobook.
Yeah. It's funny the things that you pointed out because they are the exact things that I pointed out to my son in the car, like identical. So the opening scene, um, to me in the book was a little drawn out. Like it felt a little long in the book, but it was important. And one of the things that you lose because of that, and my son did not realize it, is that when in the movie, when they're doing flashbacks, they're not just random flashbacks to tell his backstory. Those are him remembering at that point in time what happened in his past. So as the movie is going on, he's remembering things that happened to him. We're not just because we're so used to seeing movies now that intersperse flashbacks that if you don't explain that, it just looks like a movie that they're telling the backstory as the movie goes. So the impact is lost in that last scene when he realizes that it was not his choice to go. Right. In the book, that scene is so much more dramatic. And his breakdown afterwards in the book is so much more dramatic. And I mean, you see him be sad in the movie, and you don't really know why. Like, it doesn't feel like it goes together the way that it should, because we should have known clearly that he was remembering that at that moment, and that's why he was so upset. And if people saw that and understood it, that's great. But I didn't feel like we were really clearly shown that when the flashbacks are happening for him, like our real timeline is from when he wakes up till the end of the movie. And all of those flashbacks are actually part of the main timeline. It's just him remembering them in the past. And so I felt like that was lost in translation. And then I also told my son the exact same thing about Rocky. Rocky is a brilliant engineer, and one of the things that they bring up later in the book more than once is that when it comes to engineering, Ryland trusts Rocky explicitly. If Rocky says it's this, it is this, 100% with engineering. And if it's science, Rocky 100% trusts Ryland. Like their relationship is built not just on friendship, right? And not just, I'm an alien, you're an alien, let's, be cool together. Like it is a scientific respect thing. Like they see each other's skill sets and they build off of that. So, and I think that was definitely lost also. But I do agree. Like I saw it in IMAX, which I don't usually do, right? But I was thinking about it and I was like, this is feels like a film that really needs to be. So I was like, I'm gonna go see it. So I'll spend the extra money, and it's only me and my son. Like if it was me and my whole family, I've been like, fuck you guys, we're gonna watch it and flip. But because I'm not a rich person, I'm not made of money. But it was just two of us. So I was like, okay. So we saw it in the IMAX. Um, a funny thing he pointed out, and he catches this stuff all the time, is that the aspect ratio would change. So you would have IMAX scenes, and I think it was mostly the flashbacks that were not IMAX. So those would be the smaller aspect ratio, except for there was like one random scene in the flashbacks that was not. It was done in IMAX. I don't know which one it was, but he said it was like for him because he noticed it was jarring. Like it didn't line up with the rest of the movie, and I thought that was interesting. The other thing that I think they played up in the movie that was hinted at in the book, but didn't wasn't really a thing was the relationship between Ryland and the woman in charge, whose name I just can't remember. There was a little more flirtation in the movie than there was in the book. Like in the book, they basically he's working with the other scientists and they're like, yeah, dude, she likes you more than everybody else. And then that's like it. Like that's
Yeah.
the most we hear of it. So
Her name was director Strat or Eva Strat.
yeah,
So
Strat.
I don't know if I read that as for me, I didn't read it as flirtation, but maybe I'm just an idiot. I was just more thinking like she's just like this ice queen who for some reason like he's able to kind of like make her a little vulnerable and then she goes in, does her karaoke, and then she's like, "Oh no, my heart is showing. I have to leave now." And then she leaves because
For me,
he
it was just there was too many like lingering glances. Like they just made those just a little too much. Like they were
fascinating.
really saying that there's more to these two, which is okay. It's just not what's in the book. And
Right.
I think if they had actually done that better in the movie, that betrayal at the end would have been that much more impactful.
Worse.
You
Yeah.
know,
Point.
and it didn't. And that's the other thing. So another thing that we miss in the movie is that the science officer, the guy that's gonna go. I can't remember the character's name, but he's the black guy, and then he's got the girl that he's always talking to. They don't
We're
do a good
together.
job of
Oh.
showing that she is on the backup crew.
Hmm.
They are all picked because they are single. They have no ties. Well, these two start having a relationship that is discussed very openly in the book because the guy is very forward. Um, and then they die together. So they both die in that big explosion, which is why he has to go. But like they're like the uncomfortableness of like, well, could these two even just decide not to do it because they found each other here? And now you would be asking them to split up. That's the whole reason you pick people that aren't, in a relationship. And so, to me that was a bit that was left out. It wasn't critical, but I feel like it still feels like storyline. And then the other bit that I don't know how you're going to do, because here's the other thing that makes this book really hard to make into a movie, is that the book is written in the first person. So 90% of the book is inside this guy's head. It's all thoughts in his head. So when he's explaining, I mean, the book is like a science class for marginally true science in a lot of cases. Some of the stuff he explains obviously is true, and it's one of those things that Andy Weir is really good at. He's very, very descriptive with his science in his books, and you just don't get a lot of that. Like they didn't even talk about why he didn't look like he aged 14 years in the time that he left to get there,
Right.
right? And the reason is uh, relativity. It's time dilation. The faster you go, the slower time goes for you. So as he approaches the speed of light, time goes faster for him. Same for us on Earth. 14 years there, 4 years here. And they just don't even explain that. They don't like we get at the end, we see the little pods and they put the Beatles names on them, John Paul, Ringo,
There you go.
idiot, whatever the Beatles names are, I don't
George.
care. Sure. Um, they don't even explain like that, and they don't even explain that the pods are actually called Beatles because in the book it sounds
Like
like they
Beatles.
look a little more buggy,
Hmm.
and they didn't really look very buggy in this. Um, and so, just it's little things like that that I think and like Saloni said, if you watch it from the perspective of somebody that doesn't have that knowledge, I think it's okay. Like my son kind of waffled. Like at first he was like, yeah, it was too slow, it was too long. Some of the things were slower in parts and he didn't love it. Um, but like as we talked about it more, he's like, yeah, I liked it more. And visually, obviously, it was incredible. Um, and one of the things that I think that they did really intelligently in that movie is everything is practical, except obviously space and Rocky's ship. But they built the entire um, space station or spaceship. They built the entire thing. They put him on pulleys so that he would be weightless in there. Like they did all that. Rocky is a puppet. Like they put a lot of excuse me, they put a lot of work into this movie to make it look great, and they absolutely succeeded. Like I feel like this movie, when you look at it in 20 or 30 years, is still going to look incredible.
Yes. Smart.
Um, yeah, it's like when you watch the original Star Wars, a lot of it actually holds up because it was practical, right? I mean, some of it you can tell like they were working with duct tape and some extra stuff that they found in a dumpster in the back, but like it still looks real. It still looks tangible. And when you look at the prequels to Star Wars, they look terrible because everything is CGI and CGI has grown so much since then that you can see the difference. And I don't think we'll ever really see that with this movie.
No.
Like at no point did it feel like a green screen. Um, there for me that one of the moments that I thought was too artsy was when he went out to not when they went down to the planet, but when they were collecting from the
The atmosphere of Adrian.
no before
Oh,
that when they were collecting from the pink part the Petrova line. When he's out there in the Petrova line, he goes out there and he just puts the thing out there, and then he has his moment where everything is pink and it's all beautiful, right? But the problem with that scene is it's artistic for the sake of being artistic because he can't see that. So he actually reacts like he can, and it's all around him. But just like opening the thing up wouldn't have turned space pink, right? So it's definitely was an artistic scene that was visually amazing. Like it's gorgeous, but it doesn't actually make sense. And for me, a movie like this, where you're asking us to really believe the science in it, whether it's true or not, things have to feel real, I think. And so that kind of lost me. But yeah, I mean, overall, I did really enjoy the movie. I think, like you said, Andrew, I made the comment, a week or two ago that I read something where they were saying that Ryan Gosling is like this generation's Tom Hanks, right? Like he's starting to do movies where you see him and he's a dramatic actor, or you see him and he's a funny actor, and he's spreading his range around. But one thing that he did in this movie is he wasn't Ryan Gosling, the beautiful man, right? Like he was Ryan Gosling, a good
the
actor.
everyman. Yeah.
Yeah, 100% in every man. And to the point that Salony made, I think they over every man him because he is smarter than the character that we saw. You know, in the book, he has his goofy moments. Like he's not a snob, like he's not a genius that like hates everybody and doesn't have fun, but they just softened him up probably too much for the movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
agree. And Andrew and I actually, this is a different movie. Andrew and I started to watch the Martian.
Hmm.
Yeah, um, and that was the author's name, Andy Weir.
Andy Weir, yeah.
Yeah, that was his first book. I didn't realize he was self-published. I mean, he just sounds
Yeah.
incredible
Hmm.
and brilliant. But he's known for his science. And
Yes.
even though we're probably a little bit more than halfway through The Martian, um, what I've noticed is they do focus on the science.
Hmm.
And the science is a huge part of that
Yeah.
story. Well, just like it's a part of that storyline, the science for Project Hail Mary is huge. And I really wish they would not have diluted that. I think they just
Hmm.
focused more on, to what both of you are saying in terms of the visual effects. They're stunning and they're beautiful, but you also need a good story and a story that's paced well and is told well, not just I sort of felt like in the editing part they were like, okay, we'll throw this in here and then we'll throw this in here, and there wasn't a lot of it didn't feel very cohesive at times, and the pacing overall just felt off. So I would have liked to have seen more science, and I think you were saying something to that extent too,
Yeah.
Kevin, that there's so much more that went behind it, because that level of complexity and the thought process, and then to your point that it's mostly in Ryland Grace's head, he's the narrator, but just to be able to translate that science in a way, even if it is complex, give people that opportunity, like put that information out there, because that is a huge part of this particular story.
Yeah.
I also
Yeah.
feel like,
They don't even talk about how absolutely impressive the ship is, the
yeah.
Rocky ship, and how the metal that he uses is something that, at least as far as we know, is absolutely impossible, right? And so, because it's argon is a gas, but they've somehow turned it into a metal. It is an insanely incredible metal, right? And so, because they don't really explain that, they don't also really explain later on how using that metal during the process of breeding the Talmiba is what they called it. They don't, they say, oh, it's because I did this, and then it's just done. But in the movie or in the book, they really explain that like that whole experiment goes so fast. Like they never explain. I don't even think did they even talk about the third planet in Rocky's solar system?
I don't think they did. Mm-mm.
Because that's a significant part of the book. Also, because much like Venus, that's where their Petrova line is. So
Mm.
in Rocky's system, all of the astrophage are living there, and then they travel back and forth to the sun, and that's what the Petrova line is, right? And so on in Rocky's solar system, there's a third planet, and they call it Three World, I think, is what they come up with as the name for that. And like they also don't explain that Rocky's people didn't even understand space at any point until they realized they were dying, because they were brilliant on their own world, but because of the way that they see the world, they don't see things, they hear things. Everything is done through sound waves. Everything beyond their planet just doesn't exist, right? Like it's
Mhm.
just, and so, it obviously changes things, and their whole worldview. They don't know about, and they do cover the fact that they don't understand radiation,
Right. Which is
right?
why the
And
crew
so that's why
died.
all his people died. Um, which I actually almost felt like that was explained better in the movie than in the book,
Huh.
because it was sort of just a mystery in the book. Um, but yeah, there's just so many things that are that were about the science that should have been in there because they better the movie. I would watch the 4 hour cut. If you told me that all of the science stuff that they left out was in there, I would watch that 4 hour cut. Maybe I'd
I
watch it in two sittings, but I'd watch it.
I think they'd be smart to actually make one, like actually make one available on streaming or whatever, because I do think that the love for this film was strong,
Mhm.
and I think people would want more. But to put it out as 4 hours or it's like 3 hours and 40 something minutes. Like, yeah, I don't think it would have flown uh as a first release.
Yeah, this movie that came out was the movie it had to be a
Yes,
success,
yes.
and that's fair. But I do think there's more to the story,
Hmm.
and maybe that's a perfect thing. Maybe you go watch the movie, you're like, that was good. Then you come talk to people that have read it, and you're like, oh, there's more. Then you go read it. And like I said, Andy Weir is very sciencey in his books. Like there's a whole lot in there, but he does a good job explaining it. And again, the science is not all necessarily true, but it's believably false.
So I have a question for both of you, and we can start with Saloni first. And the first of all, I would say is like I get the sense that the science was a big part of it, but I also recall you liking the reader. But I'll pose a question to both of you guys. Like, what about the book like did really grabbed you? Like what did you like about it? Now talk about the book, audiobook.
Mm. For me, just the beginning part was an interesting hook where this guy wakes up, he's in space. He has no idea where he is, where he's going. Um, and then he has to sort of unravel this
Mm,
mystery. And that mystery turns into this incredible storyline. And for me, was also the person that read it, Ray Porter. He did a phenomenal job. What I loved about the way he read the particular audiobook was he was able to do all these different accents, imitating
hmm
a variety of people. There was actually, it was a whole international group that were involved, trying to find ways to save planet Earth and trying to figure out what is it astrophage? Trying to figure
hmm
out, like, just bringing all these brilliant scientists together. Well, I loved how Ray was able to impersonate all of them. And so you would know immediately, like, who the person is. You could follow the conversations. For me, though, the most impactful part of the audiobook was when Rocky entered the scene. And I'm not even sure how they would be able to capture this in an actual book. And so I am kind of curious to actually read the book. But the reason why I thought that was just amazing was because the way Rocky communicates is through music, or this language that to us sounds like harmony or music. And this author, or the narrator, the person that read the book, Ray Porter, he did a phenomenal job with that part of it. They had to, of course, bring in some sound because initially it was, it was the scene where Rocky and Ryland are learning to communicate, and so Ryland is speaking, he's speaking English, and then you have Rocky who's communicating in his beautiful harmonic, with harmony, and it is like that for I'm not sure, a few scenes, I guess, in an audiobook. And then you start to hear, or you're also figuring out through Ryland's perspective, he's trying to problem solve and realize we have to learn how to communicate. So
hmm
he ends up getting the software. The beautiful part to me is how it merges, like how it all comes together with Rocky in his musical way of communicating, Ryland with his English way, and then there's a part in the audiobook where it all kind of overlays, and you have Rocky's musical way, and then you have this kind of robotic-ish voice.
hmm
Um, and that is ultimately the voice that becomes Rocky's voice. And it was just done so masterfully that I felt like it was a beautiful storyline that hooked me. I was all in. I listened to it on my walks. I was happily doing the dishes and cleaning and everything because I would listen to it continuously. And I was sad when it ended to the point where I did go back afterwards, like a week later, to listen to the moment where Ryland meets Rocky and just the development of their friendship and how they get to know each other. Yeah, it was just so beautifully done.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. The reader is incredible. Andrew, if you haven't heard it at all, the guy has a voice that sounds like a mix between like James Spader and Bryan Cranston.
Okay.
Like he's right in there, like his normal re speaking voice is like that. Um, but yeah, his accent work is so good that actually when Strat shows up in the movie, her accent to me sounded almost identical to what he did in the book. Like it was such a trip. Like yeah, he nailed it. And so like yeah, his accent work was great because he did Russian. He did a good job of letting you know. I mean, he doesn't have a very feminine voice, but he did a good job making sure that you could tell that the characters that he was reading were female when they were female. Like he would bring his voice up a little bit, and he did all the accent work well. Um, and he just did a really good job. And one of the things that I think I told you, Andrew, is that I saw an interview somewhere where he said he didn't even read the book in advance.
Yep.
He did this stuff as he was going through so that his reactions to scenes and things like that would be more natural. And I thought that was pretty impressive because I can't think of anybody that would be insane enough to do that. Like you would want to like understand what you're doing, and he didn't do that, and he did an amazing job. Um, and it's funny because you were talking about the opening scene, and I did say earlier that it was felt a little dragged out for me. But one of the things that happens in that very first scene, he wakes up, he still thinks he's on Earth in the book. Like basically in the movie, you instantly know that he's in space. Like
Yes.
he gets that almost right away.
Yeah.
In the book, he's just in a lab. He doesn't understand the in the book, the centrifuge is already going. So he's got gravity. He doesn't even realize. Oh, no, it's not the centrifuge. It's because he's being pushed along. Because he does wake up with gravity in the movie also. It's because the ship is traveling, right? So momentum is pushing him to the back of the ship. Um, he he drops something in the book and it like bothers him and he can't figure out why. And then he's like, well, it fell faster than it should have. And then he's like, well, shit, how do I know that? Like it's all these little discoveries about the things, and that you don't get that in the movie, but in the book, it really is. He's like, well, how did I know it fell that fast? And then he's got to measure how fast it fell. And he's like, well, that fell at, 13 meters per second squared. It should be 9.8 meters per second squared. He's like, why do I know that? Like he has to completely learn who he is, right? Like it's not just like, I don't know. It just felt so fast in the movie.
Yes.
And it is a long process in the book. I mean, you're talking probably 20, 30 pages of the book is him just discovering who he is, what he knows, why he knows it, where the hell he is, and then starting to figure out what's going on. Right. So he's got to go through all this. He's basically just a blank slate of a man figuring stuff out who happens to have knowledge. Then he runs into Rocky and then
Sorry,
goes from
that
there. No, go
reminds
ahead.
me. Yeah, something Salony said. I think you said I think you said in the book they cover that he had some sort of genetic predisposition to survive
Mm-hmm.
the travel,
Yeah.
whereas the others didn't. That wasn't covered in the movie at all either,
Mm-mm.
and I think that should have been covered. Like
Oh,
even
it's
like
it's
maybe in
yeah.
the movie.
No, no, no. In the book, it's
Yeah,
monumental.
that's what I'm
It's
saying.
like
Yeah, it
one
should have
in
been covered.
every 7,000 people has it.
Right. I think
Yeah.
So
the lady, I'm forgetting her name,
Strat.
Strat, yes. She mentioned something at the point where she's like, you've got the genetic predisposition or something. She alluded to it, but
No, somebody else tells him. Somebody else tells him he has it, and he's like, "Wait, what?" And they're like, "Oh, she didn't tell you," and he's like, "No." So she kept it from him that he had it.
um, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
and
such a huge piece because in the movie they make it seem like this guy, this, kind of bubbling scientist, he's great at being a
He's like the
scientist.
chosen one,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But he's somehow the one to save, they're going to risk everything they have on him.
Sorry.
Yeah, the
And
movie
for me,
does
even
a good job
sorry.
at doing that.
And even the fact, but I just feel like it was such a dice roll. It's like, again, like I just feel like it just sucks for the other two astronauts who just die, but it's because they die because like it's already a bit of a dice roll. But like, why did he survive? It would, to me, there's a lot of like luck in this movie, and I'm okay with the luck piece. But it would have made it feel a bit more grounded and realistic if you said, "Oh, and by the way, the reason why he didn't die was because he had this gene thing." Because I think one of the things I
Well, the
said
other
to you when
two
we
did
got,
too. Like they passed it. So leaving
oh,
it
they
out
did.
doesn't necessarily hurt the story, because they also had to have the
Oh,
marker
so
to
you
travel.
had
So
you had to have the
y-
gene. Okay,
yeah,
I
because
didn't
this
know.
is an
Okay.
entire piece of the story that's left out. Because they do research. They're like, well, if we send you and you stay awake for 4 years, anything weird can happen. People are people and people are stupid. Like inherently, like not intelligence wise, but like
Oh,
lizard
right.
brain
So let's
stupid.
just put you out.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. So maybe a man and a woman decide that they are going to
They want
fool
to have
around.
kids. Yeah.
Oh, oops, we accidentally had a baby. Or a man and a man fight over something because he's Chinese and he's American and they see
Smart.
something differently. They can't get over it. All of a sudden, they're trying to kill each other. I mean, we've seen it in 1,000 horror movies, right? Like anything can go wrong. And so the solution is, well, to have them travel this trip and stay healthy, we have to put them in a coma. Well, people can't survive in a coma that long. Well, we've done this research, and well, somebody was working on this research that said there's actually a genetic marker for people to be more successful in a coma than not, but only 1 in 7,000 people have that. And so now their pool of scientists, this, when they talk about this huge pool of scientists they have working on it, well, now is that much smaller anyways. So when these two people die, that were the two scientists that also had the marker die, and you only have 3 days, how do you find somebody that's a scientist, an astronaut, and has the marker?
Yeah.
You don't.
Trained with astrophage and has a better idea.
Exactly. Exactly.
So I remember turning to you, Salony, and saying, like, did they make the right call? Like, I just felt like that was a bit of an ethical question, because Homeboy, I also loved the realisticness. Like, he knew all the stakes, and I thought he was gonna be like, all right, I'll go. But he was like, nope. He's like, I'm not going. I don't care. I'm the only one. I'm not going. And then she's like, okay, cool. All right. All right, boys, come on in.
Well, that's
Don't
the
make
thing
this
too, is
like,
like she doesn't want to force him.
no, but
She
she did.
wants him to pick it, but
Yeah.
she's ready to force him.
Yeah. Do you think,
Eh,
is that right? Or what do you think?
I think in that situation, it's not right, but it's right. Like like you don't have a better option. You do not have a better option. You don't have the time to teach somebody the things that he knows, and it's just not an option. And you have to find not only do you have to find somebody with that genetic marker and teach them, you also have to try get them to travel to wherever they are so that they can then get
There was
them
no
onto the
time.
ship. There's just no time. He's the only option.
And
Uh,
given
So,
everything that you have, like what's at stake, which at that point, at least in the book, they say it's about 30 years or something when it's going to be this
yeah,
ice
his
age.
round trip would be 30 years ish.
Yeah. And it would be the amount of time. Well, they weren't ever planning on it being a round trip.
right.
Not for
It
him,
was a
but
one way.
and that's the other thing they don't talk about too is that the pods, the little beetles, would get back faster because
Yeah.
they are smaller and have less mass, so they would travel faster and return sooner than he would if he turned the ship around.
Yeah. I think there's this whole time crunch issue because of what's happening to the sun and the planet. And
Hmm.
it's, they're already starting to feel the changes. In fact, in the book, they have to do, I don't think they covered this in the movie at all, where they had to destroy some of the like in Antarctica, like the icebergs and stuff. They had
Hmm.
to deliberately
Yeah.
do that because if they had to find a way to warm the global temperature, basically to do like accelerate global warming, because they knew what was coming was the sun dimming and it was going to become essentially this ice age. So they had this, there were so many things at stake that the book did a much better job
Hmm.
explaining how it ended up being him. Whereas the
And yeah, and they don't talk about how catastrophic the temperature change is. Because when you think 10 to 15 degrees, right, you're like, okay, that's cold. But they talk about how, in the last 100 years, the planet has changed by 1.5 degrees, maybe, and it's pushed us already towards global warming, right? So if you change by 1 or 2 degrees, you're making a significant shift. 10 to 15 degrees, catastrophic. And they kind of say that, but they don't explain why, right? So that's just left out, right? And so again, something that was sciencey that probably should have been in there. It's like it really was to make it a successful blockbuster movie. You can't teach the masses, right? You've got to work with what people know because if you're trying to teach them, they're not going to get. I mean, I had people behind me when walking out of the movie that were like, "Yeah, I was kind of bored. I almost fell asleep for a minute there." And part of me was like, I kind of get it. Like there were some parts in there that were slow. You don't understand what's happening. But I'm also like, dude, if nothing else, you sat there on a fucking, big ass screen and this thing was gorgeous. When they are on that planet on Adrian,
Adrian.
which for some dumb reason, dude, when I listened to the audiobook, I did not understand the name. I did not get it.
Oh,
And then I
right,
was watching the
Rocky.
movie and
Yep.
I was like, you moron. I was like, of course it's Adrian because he's Rocky. And so, but like that was so beautiful. Like how you can't sleep through that. That's incredible,
No, that
right?
was the best part of the movie
Uh,
for me.
the other thing that I thought that made me think, and I don't know that it would make most people think, was the first time he opens the door. And it's when he's going out into space to catch the thing that they tossed across. If you think about what you see out there when you open that door, it is the most nothing imaginable, right? Like you could walk into the middle of the desert and look out in all directions in the middle of the desert and see nothing, but you still see the desert and you still see the sun and you still see in space, the amount of nothing is unfathomable. And I just read something the other day about there's a phenomenon where astronauts go into space and the first time they see the planet Earth, they're like, we are we're so wrong about everything. It's like this epiphany moment where they're like, what are we doing? We are here and there is nothing around us. This is all we have. This little thing. We have to get along because this is all we have. And as soon as you make that look small, as soon as you realize like how small you are, it's like this like religious moment for them. It doesn't mean that they believe in one God or the other or whatever, but it is like this is all we have. This is what we're sharing. And if we don't make it work, that's it, you know? And so it's interesting to think about space in that regard because he opens that door and if you slip,
You're done.
you just fly off forever. You'll fall asleep when you run out of air, but you will just go. And that like it is terrifying and I don't know how you could put that across well and get that like genuine sense of terror that you could probably have, especially as somebody that's not an astronaut, right? Like he even jokes, he's like, they didn't train me in the pool. Like he's like, I haven't done anything. And she's like, yeah, that's just for social media. We don't go in the pool. And I love that the AT&T girl, Milana Vaintrub, got to
Elena.
play
Yep.
the character. Like her career is finally picking up. She's been around for a long time. She actually was like an improv comedic actress.
Oh, cool.
And funny enough, she did a sci-fi comedy show that nobody saw because it was on like stream on like YouTube or something. Um, but she's finally starting to get roles. I think she's actually pretty talented. Um, but it was fun to see her. And then Ken Leung played the Chinese guy. He was from a little show
Miles
called
Lost.
Lost. I don't know
Woohoo!
if you've heard of that one. Um, but yeah, the other thing is Ryan Gosling talked about. So her the actress's name is Sandra, that plays Strat. He said he had more fun with her than almost anybody he's ever worked with. So
That is such a trip.
yeah, so that scene when they first meet and they're walking out of his office and he starts walking toward his bike, that was the first time they ever met. They had not spoken nothing. And right before they said action, she leans over to him and she whispers, she's like, I'll race you. So if you watch, they start walking faster and faster and faster towards the bikes. And it was because of what she said. And he didn't even know who she was. Like he did not know a damn thing about her. And like he said from that point on, like he thought she was so much fun.
That's awesome. What has she been in? What else has she been in? I hadn't seen
Good
her
I
in.
don't know.
question.
I feel like I've never seen her before. She looks like a knockoff, like Sarah Snook to me from
I know. She's like a skinnier Sarah Snook. She's got the same kind of small beady eyes.
yeah, yeah, just a little more
Um,
European, a little more,
she's
you know.
very German.
Hmm.
So I'm looking at her filmography. It's all German stuff.
Is
So
it okay?
yeah, I think she's straight up. This might be her first US. Uh,
It won't be her last.
nope.
I thought she was good. Like I thought, but I
She was
think
really good.
in the book she's a little harder, and that's another thing that they kind of skip over is just how badass she is. There's a moment in the book um, where they're talking about how they have to put all of the software basically in the world onto this ship and all of the books in the world onto the ship because you never know what you're going to need when you're out there. This is so unprecedented that you have to, and somebody takes her to court. Like this group of writers and creatives take her to court and they're like, this is our property. You can't just take it without paying us. And she's so badass. She's like, yes, I can. She's like, I have absolute immunity to anything. She's like, you can't. And so, like, the judge is like, what? And she's like, yeah, I'm just here because we can deal with this all at once. I can tell you it doesn't matter, and I'm going to go. And the judge gets mad, and she's like, no, you're going to have to stay. And she calls the bailiff. And then all of a sudden, like, 10 Marines walk in to protect her on the way out. And she's like, bye. Like, she's like,
Have like, I think the other side has their team of lawyers, and she doesn't. She just
yeah, she's by
walks
herself.
by herself. Like, I've got the paperwork. I've got immunity. Leave me alone.
Yeah. Yeah. She's like a straight badass. And like everybody is like afraid of her. Like, and she's cold in the movie, but you don't quite get that like total badassness that she has in the book.
Yeah. And the thing
Yeah.
is, you don't dislike her
No,
either, at least in
No.
the book, because you
you
realize
feel for her.
yeah, she's doing what she's doing to save humanity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's
So,
doing the impossible.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes. And they don't have much time and they're under a lot of pressure. So they're this, yeah, I go back to the stakes are really high, and the book did a great job of,
Hmm.
So this is really random, but I feel like it needs to be said because obviously, like we talk about movies, we talk about TV shows, and right now I think Hollywood feels like they're in a bit, or at least the theaters feel like they're in a bit of an existential crisis, like to stay alive, especially post COVID. But
Hmm.
I love that Ryan said, like when he went to one of the screenings, he goes, 6 years ago, I got the manuscript. It's the most ambitious thing I'll ever make. Seemed impossible. It was too good to not give a shot. 6 years later, we did it. Here we are. We're all back in theaters. And this is my favorite part. It's not your job to keep them open. It's our job to make things that make it worth you coming out. You know? And I feel like that's like what it's about. I feel like that's, I mean, when, when people talk about, and this is one of my gripes again, I'll always talk about when people talk about superhero fatigue or Star Wars fatigue, it irks me because to me it's like, no, it's mediocrity fatigue. If you
Mm.
make it good, people will come. Spider-Man, the new trailer, A Brand New Day, just is
Destroyed the internet.
the first film
Yeah.
to hit 1 billion views in
Yeah.
24 hours for a
Yeah.
trailer. Really? People are sick of superheroes? No,
Yeah.
they're sick of bad movies that happen to have superheroes in them. Stop
Yeah.
it.
Well, and it's funny because I've talked about before where I live, when I go to the movies, the theater is never full because I live in a lot of small areas. Like all the areas around, like Bristol, Connecticut is where ESPN is located. Bristol's a big town. Hartford's a little ways over. That's a big town. Um, but all the places in between, the places where I live, if you go to the movies, it's never sold out. I was in an IMAX theater, which is not small, right? This is the biggest theater available, jam-packed, not an empty seat in the house for the second weekend. Not for the first weekend, but the second weekend,
Right.
right? So, it was number one. I think this movie actually came out at the right time of the year. I think it's starting to get warm. People are going out more. Probably not a problem you guys have over there in Nevada, but um, you know, eh, people are getting out more. So like spring is starting, people are getting out, so that's busy. Then it just happens to be an entertaining movie with a star people like. Everything about this movie was the right thing at the right time. There's no competition for it right now. And so, yeah, it's going to be a great success. I'm really curious um, to see if it gets any kind of buzz come award season. The only thing I really think it'll get talked about is visual effects.
Yes.
Um, but
Cinematography
I
too.
really did think Ryan Gosling did a good job.
He did.
I think he could have done a better job if they had made the character closer to the book, though. I think it would have been a more impressive performance with that. But he played the everyman so well, like so well. And somebody pointed out, they're like, if you want to see the range of Ryan Gosling and see where he's come, you watch this movie, you watch the one with is it Steve Carell, the romance one that everybody
I never
loves,
saw it, but I know what you're talking about.
actually great. And then watch something like Drive, where he's basically like a getaway driver slash it's pure drama. Like it's not a fun movie. And you watch these three movies and you see like genuine range. And you can actually see the guy's really talented. He's just looking, he needs that next vehicle to be the thing that makes him talked about in that light.
Well, I'll tell you, I think it's already
It's in
slated.
the works,
So
right?
the Daniels, who are the directors who did Everything Everywhere All at Once, which got Michelle Yeoh and oh my gosh, what's her
Jamie Lee
name? Jamie Lee
Curtis.
Curtis, their Oscars.
Yeah.
They're making an untitled project, but it's slated for November 19th, 2027, which is like award season. It's a new sci-fi event film, and he's the star. So yeah, I think, like I said, Gosling, you called it. Yeah, at first it was like, man, Tom Hanks was never a hunk, right? I think Gosling was, but it's like, it's
Yeah.
okay, whatever. You can always have a little bit of a tweak, but I think Gosling is the it dude for this decade.
Well, and I think Hanks was different because Hanks was a comedic actor. Okay, like he came out of Bosom Buddies, he came out of Splash,
Yeah.
all this stuff. There was no inclination, there's no inkling that he was going to be Philadelphia, that he was going to be Bubba, or Forrest Gump, that he was going to have these roles
Apollo
and
13.
absolutely crush them,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
He was just going to be the funny guy. So Ryan Gosling was always going to be the dreamy guy.
You just did it.
Yeah.
You just hung it up. No, yeah, they went from one and then evolved into s- an actor's
Yeah.
actor.
Yeah, and I think he got a lot of credit for La La Land too, which I think he deserved. I
Yes.
think he was actually really good in that. Um, but yeah, at this point in his career, I think it's a matter of choosing the right movies and the right reasons for making them. Sometimes you want to have fun. Sometimes you want to make a movie that's just fun, and you can do that. But if you're looking to go down in the history books, you find your you find your role, the thing that makes you special. Tom Hanks found that in the 90s when all of a sudden he did like 4 or 5 years in a row where he was nominated for Best Actor. And the funny story about him is he went to Chabot College. I don't know if you've heard of that place,
Oh,
but he went to Chabot.
I know that.
The story is that the acting coach, the acting teacher at the time, told him that he didn't have it, that he wasn't going to make it, and he should give up. And it seems like maybe that teacher was wrong. Um, you know, and so like everybody's just looking for that moment. I think, if you're like a Leo DiCaprio, you hit it pretty early and then you just go and run with it. And plus, I think Leo has the advantage of falling in with Martin Scorsese pretty early, and having your dude that you make movies with all the time. Um, but yeah, it's not an easy industry, and I think a lot of good acting, especially in comedy or in parts that are comedic, get looked over because people don't understand that comedy is harder than drama. Like comedic timing is so hard; it's so unnatural, and you have to be great at it. That's why Leslie Nielsen, the guy that did the Naked Gun movies, he was actually a very good dramatic actor until he did. Um, I forget what the name of the show was, but there was a show that Naked Gun was based on. There was a comedy cop show, and then it became Naked Gun, and then all that.
Police
And
Squad?
yes, Police Squad, and he's ridiculous. Like you watch Airplane or you watch Naked Gun, and the dude is unbelievably funny. And it's because he is insanely talented that he can pull that off.
One more thing I just want to just like establish some cred here. The first time I ever saw Ryan Gosling was actually in a 2001 film called The Believer, and it was a trip because basically it's about a Jewish guy who becomes a neo-Nazi. It's a trip, and it was loosely based on the true story of this guy named Dan Burrows, who apparently did unfortunately unalive himself from the conflict of being a Jewish neo-Nazi. But yeah, early 2000s. Not a lot of people have heard of it. Billy Zane's in it, the bad guy from
Hmm.
Titanic.
Titanic.
And then Teresa Russell, who I think she's like one of
I
those
know the
like,
name.
oh, I think she's like an ex no, I don't know who she is. Anyway, I thought she was one of the people. I thought she was Felicity, but that's not Felicity.
No, it's Carrie
Anyway,
Russell.
yeah, same last name. In any event, but they were both in the Mickey Mouse Club together. In any event, if you want to see some more like early Ryan Gosling chops before he blew up, check that one out. Serious stuff. I remember thinking, wow, that's a big deal. But
Yeah.
anyway,
But yeah, I think
oh,
for
I have
me,
another question. Sorry,
oh,
another question. Demographics, really quick. Like you. Vegas, believe it or not, there's so much more to do in Vegas. Theaters are never full. Yes, it was the opening weekend, but our theater was full. That doesn't happen very often. Um, Demographically, though, one thing I kind of noticed was between Salony and between Pete, shout out to Pete. I think it was Pete's mom who I think said that she read or did the audiobook. I feel like this movie did have a bit more of a woman skew than like your typical sci-fi fare. So I say all that to say, because I could be wrong, did you get a sense of what your crowd was when you were watching the film?
I had to my left. I know there was two guys definitely to my left.
Hmm.
Um, but but I don't know. I mean, there was definitely coming out of there. There was definitely a lot of males in the audience, but
Okay.
I think it doesn't necessarily, I think, appeal to women specifically more than men, but I do think it equally appeals to both because there's nothing inherently masculine about it, right? Like it's not like it's chest thumping like a battle movie or anything like that. You do have a strong female character in Strat, but she's not so strong that she would intimidate men, right? So you don't have to worry about that crowd. And they didn't put her in the film enough also that it feels like, oh no, this is a woman-led film. Guys can't go see it because we are fragile or whatever we are these days. Um, and then, Ryan Gosling has gone from this guy that is the dreamboat to the guy that's approachable. So now he's the guy that fits both sides. Women can still like look at him and be like, he's still a good looking guy, right? Like Ryan Gosling's not a bad looking dude. but he can also act, and he's very likable. Men see him, and we're like, I kind of want to be that guy, but not so much that you're like, yeah, again, not the chest thumping. So I think it fits in this perfect spot where it doesn't worry about gender because you have the bromance is even the wrong term for it. Like this is not this film maybe feels a little more bromancy than the book. In the book, it is more of a respect and like brotherhood thing. But like, yeah, it's just more of a respect thing. It's not a competition. It's not anything that I think would push anyone away. And because the science is dumbed down, I think in that respect, it also appeals to the larger audience. I think a younger audience that is like, I don't want to learn about science today, can go watch it and not feel like they're, being fed a textbook, which in a lot of cases, the book does, it doesn't feel like a textbook, but they're teaching you a lot in a lot of cases. Um, so yeah, I
Chemistry.
just think, no, go ahead. What?
No, I was going to say chemistry all over again in some parts.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah, it's crazy. And I think that was another thing that I caught in the movie that I know wasn't in the book, and they specifically talk about. And early in the movie, he's moving stuff around, and there's plants growing um, on a shelf. But in the book, they specifically say there is nothing organic on the ship
Mm.
because if he's going to go home, he can only survive on this finite amount of food. He's very lucky that the other two astronauts died because he has extra food because of that. And so he, that's a whole calculation. That's a whole thing that matters. And it sort of takes you back to The Martian, where he's planting potatoes in Martian soil. And he has a very unfortunate way of making that soil fertile. Um, but like there's a science to that. Like he explains that the things that have to be there to make these things work, and potatoes work because they're so hardy and all that. And so, some of that stuff is just kind of missed or glossed over. But again, I think leaving that out does allow it to appeal to a broader audience.
Yeah. I was going to add in terms of also the demographics part, at least for the movie, they made it very family friendly. And in fact, I think the rating is PG-13, if I'm not mistaken. So I think the idea is to bring, your family to watch this movie and for it to be reachable across um, all audiences. So I think they definitely captured that. And then going back to Ryan Gosling, I'll also add that I have seen a few interviews of him and the directors and the other people that came together in making this movie. And I have a lot more respect for him in this role after learning the backstory of how he read the book. He read it in, I don't know, just a few days, and he was in awe. He called the author, said he wanted to make a movie. He was one of the big producers behind it. So this was his project to really make it come to life. So yeah, props to him for really putting all that energy behind it and
Hmm.
wanting to turn it to what it is.
There's a really fun interview out there, and I wish I could remember the woman's name, but he actually sits down with an astrophysicist, and she's like, and the unfortunate part is she asks some questions that aren't in the movie, but they are in the book. And she's like, well, what can you tell me about relativity and time dilation? And he's like, well, what can I tell you that you don't already know? Like he's very coy about it, right? Like he's having a good time. And he's got a great personality. Like he actually seems like a guy, again, that you would want to hang out with. Like he
1000%.
just seems like so down to earth, and he has a lot of fun. Have you ever seen um, the Great British Bake Off at all? So in the new seasons, there's a co-host. She's a black lady. She's a comedian in the UK. Um, she's and she's funny, but she does an interview with Harrison Ford and Ryan Gosling, and I don't remember what movie. Oh, it's because they're in Shrinking together, and they're hilarious. Ryan Gosling and Harrison Ford together was
Do
hilarious.
you know that they also the first time they worked together, it was for my God, Blade Runner 2049.
Mm-hmm.
And there's actually a funny scene where there's a fight scene and Ryan accidentally hits him for real. They kept it in the film, but like they fight and then he like right and Harrison's like like that, but it was a real punch. That's really funny. But going back also, this is for for the New Jack Swing crew. So back when Ryan was on Mickey Mouse Club. Um, he performed a song called Cry for You by Jodeci. Now, Jodeci is definitely not your mainstream crossover group. Like you have to be an R&B person to know who they are. And someone had asked him on a talk show, like, do you ever find yourself singing Cry for You? Like, and he goes, yeah, I sing that song all the time. He goes, baby, I'm begging, begging, baby. Like he actually said that just boom, unprompted. I'm like, you're a real one, dude. Like that's awesome that you still remember that. But no, he sounds like a cool dude and not full of himself and a real one. And I just think authenticity and excellence will bring people to theaters. And I think we need more of that. And I think we are getting more of that. I keep saying it, 2026 is going to be banging. So there it
Yeah, and
is.
I'll say too, like with that in mind, I think I feel like even though somebody like Timothy Chalamet is more or not award worthy, but gets more award buzz than Ryan Gosling, I think Ryan Gosling is always going to sell more tickets because he's more approachable. I think if we never talked about Marty Supreme, really, but that movie wasn't a bad movie, and it wasn't a bad performance by Timothy Chalamet. But when when you're looking at award performance, when you're looking at the Oscars, to me, it's not even close to One Battle After Another or Sinners. Like it's not even close. You've got those two up in this tier, and Marty Supreme was down here. And it's not that he did a bad job. He was very good in it. But it's a movie about a guy that likes himself too much that plays ping pong. Like that's Marty Supreme in the nutshell. And it's not a, like I said, it's not a bad movie or anything. It's just, the other movies had depth. The other movies had actors that seem likable and approachable. And I think that goes a long way. Like Leo is maybe not approachable. I think Leo probably likes himself a lot. But, at this point, when Leo puts out a movie, you're like, well, shit, there's another Oscar nomination, right? But like Michael B. Jordan, that dude, it just seems like the most like
Yeah,
down
a
to
real
earth,
one.
approachable guy. He shows up
You
every
go
award show
to
with his mom,
And then he
right?
goes to In and Out like that and hanging out with the staff and taking pictures and selfies like with his
Yeah,
Oscar on the like no, that's
The
yeah.
next day, right? Wasn't it? Or
no,
that
the
It
same
was the
night.
same night. Yeah,
That was his
yeah,
after party.
yeah.
Going In and
pretty
Out.
cool.
Love it. It's funny. I was also thinking about Chalamet because he made a big faux pas when he talked about
Yes,
ballet or whatever. But
ballet and
then it
opera.
ballet and opera. But check this out though. Literally the very next day, the Dune trailer drops. And I was like, he'll be fine. Because like that, I'm sorry, that trailer to me was everything. I was like, holy crap, this
But
movie
here's the
is
thing,
about to
it's
be
everything to you. My son watched that trailer and he's like, that looks like the most boring shit I have ever
yeah,
seen.
nah. Like
No,
the
because
movie's gonna
and I told him, I was like, for you, especially having not watched the first two, it absolutely is. It will bore the living shit out of you because Dune is so dense that
yeah,
if you do not have all of that prior knowledge, if you don't watch that first movie, that is a little slow. It is a little slow. If you don't watch that one and enjoy it, and then watch the second one, which I haven't, and then try to watch the third one, you need every minute of those
you
first two
do.
movies to make the third one. And yes, it's going to be beautiful. I think for the problems that I have with Denis Villeneuve, he makes beautiful films.
Yes, he does.
He likes himself a little too much, but he makes
Yes, he
beautiful
does.
films. And like we talked about it though, like if you look at the box offices for Dune, they're actually not that amazing. The first one did well, the second one did less, and I think this one will actually do even less.
Actually, I think the first one did okay. The second one did way better. Now I gotta look, and because I
Yeah.
feel like I think the second one did way better, and it's a better film. I mean, I'm telling you, you're so missing out. You've got to see Dune 2. Dune 1 is just like you just need it to like know what's going on. It's slow. Dune 2, start to finish, it's just like it's perfectly paced. There's some amazing scenes, and it's really Zendaya, who, by the way, is going to have the year ever, like best year ever this year between Euphoria, uh, Dune,
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man, and I think there's one more. Yeah, it's the one
She's
where it's
with
like
Pattinson. That one
exactly
though, that one's getting a lot of guff right now.
because it's because basically she was going to be like a
She was going to be
basically
a
they're
school
together
shooter.
and she was to do a school shooting exactly, so that's going to be a little
Yeah.
weird, but it's
Yeah.
okay, whatever, everyone's coming out first. But anyways, the point of my original statement was I think what's his name, Chalamet's going to be fine. Just like yeah, you had a shitty year, shitty first part of your year, but you're going to be fine.
Here's
Yeah.
the
It's
interesting
just,
thing is that he made those the comment about ballet, but the interesting part is I think Tom Holland, whose Spider-Man movie comes out,
Yes,
doesn't he have a ballet background?
thousand
yes.
percent.
Yep. Yeah. As a matter of fact, that's how he got the role, is that he was so
Yep.
athletic and so he was bouncing around the stage when he was auditioning, and they're like, yeah, we have to cast this guy. But
It's
yeah,
funny.
he definitely does.
Sorry. It's
No, go
funny. I
ahead.
read like she actually Zendaya was like the one thing I'm jealous of is that he can do backflips like that, and like I don't like that. Like I'm jealous. I'm legit jealous of that shit. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
But yeah, I think it's just one of those things where you always have to remember that no matter how big you think you are, you can shoot yourself in the foot. You can hurt yourself in this industry by doing the wrong thing at the wrong time. And it doesn't always have to be that huge like Me Too moment. Like those are bad enough. But there's little things you can do that will make at least some people not want to work with you, and then fewer people want to work with you, and then few like it starts to cascade, and then you're out of luck.
dominoes.
Yeah. And so, you always have to be careful. You always have to be aware of that public eye because everybody's looking to take you down, especially these days. And we live in a haters era right now. And I say that with no joke. Like, we were talking about the Star Trek shows before we started recording. And like,
Andy, better watch out.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
like the everything that has a fandom now has a more vocal, like almost anti-fandom. They're like, we love this, but not if you don't make it in this very specific way. And if it's not exactly what we want, it's total garbage. And those people are so vocal now because they're not afraid to be vocal because they are behind the safety of the internet, right? Like we see so many people that like have to quit acting or have to pull away from social media. They have to
Like
do all this
Rose.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
and you see
that wasn't even
that.
earned though. They were just haters. But yes.
Yes, yeah, but it doesn't matter because like you will see even I was talking about the podcast that I watched with Jonathan Frakes and Brent Spiner, and they even said that. I mean, they've been in this industry for 40 years. They're Star Trek: The Next Generation is one of the biggest sci-fi shows of all time. Period. Right? And they're like, you still can't go on your own show and go read the comments. You can't do it because there's there's a lack of positivity now that people feel safe just being nasty to other people, like for no
That's
reason.
That's crazy. I mean, I actually saw even Mia Jovovich was talking about it, like back then. Like, so you're right. So many actors or whoever will say talent will say never read. As a matter of fact, even Kate McKinnon was talking about how she read something, and she says what the problem is. You'll always remember the negative stuff
Yep.
way more than
Yep.
any of the positive. It'll just be in your brain forever. So she said, like, yeah, if I could go back in time and tell myself not to do something, it'd be don't read your reviews.
Yeah.
Um, so Salone, just so that you know, so this is brand new news as of this podcast, but obviously it'll be older later. Now, about 6 hours ago, Andy Weir had basically fired some shots at the Star Trek universe. Basically, he had said, um, everything beyond, like he basically said like he's happy that Star Trek Academy got canceled. He basically was like, I pitched a show to them and they rejected it, but he basically said their shows are shit. The producer's a nice guy, but they didn't accept my pitch, so fuck them. Like, that was literally his words. It's in the Hollywood Reporter. And I think that's kind of a big deal, dude, because like, yes, you did The Martian, now you have this, but while there are a lot of people who hate quote unquote Kurtzman slash quote unquote woke Trek, there are a lot of people who like that. And I feel
Mhm.
like that, what you just said there, could have an impact on people's fandom of your work because you're kind of getting too big for your britches, homie. Like you didn't need to say all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. And the
When
other
you're,
thing,
yeah, I mean, like I was just going to say, timing wise, this is not good for him to do.
yeah. Well, and the other thing is like he's a great writer. He's a novelist, right? He's had the great fortune of having very good people turn his stuff into very good movies.
Yeah.
But he's not a filmmaker. So to say you pitched a show without having a history of pitching shows, you should not expect that just because you made one movie, because this is what I was talking about with Phil Rosenthal, just because you had this success here doesn't mean you're going to have it here, especially in Hollywood. They're completely different avenues. TV and movies are completely different. Everything about how they're done is different. And to just say like, "Oh, I pitched a show and they didn't like it." Well, dude, maybe you thought it was brilliant, but maybe, just maybe, it was the book version of Hail Mary versus the movie version of Hail Mary. And the movie version is what's going to sell in the visual media and in, on TV. And the book version is what's going to sell in a book. And they're two different things. And as somebody that has obviously had zero actual success in it, but has taken the time to write a novel and write a screenplay, entirely different things. And when you're talking about pitching a series, you have to go in with an entire plan. You have to have your pilot drawn out. You have to have a season plan. You have to have a potential future plan. You have to have a show Bible. You have to have all this stuff that I assume he did, right? But I also assume, based on the fact that I've never seen a show created by Andy Weir, that this may have been his first pitch. Yeah, of course it was going to get rejected.
Yeah. And you can't just hold that against,
Yeah, yeah,
Star
And you
Trek.
just don't want to speak ill of anyone like that. Like that's just not smart. But
yeah.
anyway, oh, okay, I
No, I
was
was
gonna
just
say,
gonna say you never know when you're walk into the room and Kurtzman's going to be the guy deciding your budget.
yes,
You
and
know?
or who his friends are.
Yeah.
What I was gonna say though, it's kind of funny because I got this Tomy like enterprise model, but I'm returning it because there's like things. Anyways,
Yep.
I
I
got
saw.
I got re-obsessed about Star Trek 2, right? And I was reading on the history of it because it's like one of my favorite movies. It might be my favorite again. I think it might have overtaken Infinity War and now it's back on top. Yo, I love the backstory. Like after the motion picture, you know, basically failed. Like, sorry, homies, for those who like TMP, there's one person I'm thinking of in particular, but he knows who he is.
It's a bad
Um,
movie.
it failed, okay? Paramount Films were like, no. Paramount Television, they were like, we'll make Star Trek 2. Seriously. So Star Trek 2 was made for, I think, like I think 11 million, and the first one was 40 million. So it was a fraction of the budget and a much better film.
Yep.
And it's just because the television folks did things differently. So when you talk about television and film being different, but it's just funny how the film people were like, yeah, we're not touching this. Like, no, go away. But then Paramount Television is like, we'll do it. And they did it. And it not only saved like them, it saved the whole. There would be no Star Trek without Wrath of Khan.
Yep.
It was about to be done.
100%.
And then Spock, Leonard Nimoy, literally said, "The only way I'm in this film is if I die in it." And he was supposed to die in the first 10 minutes. But then after he saw the script and realized that, like,
Maybe this
I'm
doesn't
sorry, I'm
suck.
geeking out. It doesn't suck. I want to come back. But the craziest part, and I'm gonna shut up in a second. Yo, Roddenberry, there's no hard proof, but I believe it. he totally leaked the script. He was so mad that like this film was being so militaristic. Like he's the founder and he's the creator, but they pushed him to the side. But he's the reason why the TMP movie happened. But they were like, no, no, Roddenberry, you go away. And then they let's do it our way. He leaked the script. There was fan outrage. People were pissed. So can you imagine like going to see the movie, expecting to see Spock dead? He dies in the simulator, but then he's alive, and then Kirk says, "Aren't you dead?" You know, so it's almost like they were even back in 1982, they were trolling the fans, but
Yeah.
then they show such a great movie and they really kill him. Yo, a triumph, all from television. So sometimes you just have the right people working on your movie. It was Paramount Television. I love you, Paramount Television. All right, and brand.
Well, it's funny you talk about that trolling too, because I was talking to my one of my kids the other day, and I was like, I'm almost glad that now we have this era of AI blowing up, and you now there's fake trailers for everything. So we're almost back in this era where every spoiler you see is probably fake, so you just don't believe them, right?
Hmm.
Because for the longest time, spoilers were almost impossible. Things were just locked down. The internet was not as big as it was. People weren't actively trying to spoil every damn thing all the time. So like major spoilers just didn't get out. And then we had this period of time where, Marvel had to write their scripts in chunks and only give certain parts to certain people. And then they just slapped the living shit out of Tom Holland because he couldn't shut his mouth. And then, like they really had to be careful. And now every day you see, well, here's the new Doomsday trailer or leaked scenes from the Doomsday trailer or whatever. And if you just look at it for a couple seconds, you're like, okay, that's fake.
AI.
Like I know this isn't real. And so like I'm almost at this point now where I'm like, cool, if I see something that didn't come from the studio that created it or a specific source, like if I see it from Entertainment Tonight, like if they're posting it, I believe it. They're like real. If I see it from Hollywood Reporter, I believe that. If it's from what is it?
Deadline. Oh,
Yeah.
Fandom Wire.
Oh
So
yeah.
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 Or or
Like
or or it was it what shit.
con
Giant freaking robot.
oh my God.
Yeah,
An
you know it's
embarrassment.
not.
But yeah, exactly. So like there's sources that you believe and sources that you can't. And it actually makes the spoiler stuff a little easier to ignore because you're just like it's probably fake, you know? So yeah, we've kind of come back around because
Yeah.
of all this crap.
So if it isn't Deadline, Hollywood Reporter, Variety, or Entertainment Tonight, like yeah, just
Yeah, it probably
people.
isn't real.
I'll believe people. But
Yeah,
anyway,
I believe people.
yeah.
Not TMZ. They made me mad last week.
Oh,
with
yo,
with Alan
I'm so
Richson.
glad I had the journalistic integrity to not post it because I knew something was off.
Fill me.
Break it down, Kevin.
Well, yeah. So the problem that I had, and I understand why TMZ did what they did because they're a sensationalist news
Right.
site. They need the clicks, and so they were the first one to get the story out. The problem is, you see this video of Alan Richson just punching this dude on the ground, and then Rage getting on his bike and riding off. Well, it starts with him punching this dude on the ground. You don't just like appear magically on somebody's lawn and punch them. Even if you walk up to them, there's that moment with you walk up. How is all of this preamble to this story completely cut out? Right. And so this the video leaks, and this guy's like, yeah, he beat the hell out of me. Well, then
He's
you
an
come to
actor.
find out that Alan Richson, who likes riding a motorcycle, is intelligent enough to know that when you ride a vehicle that puts you in danger a lot, you should have a body cam. You should have a camera recording your driving. Just like these days in a car, you should have a dash cam because you never know when somebody's going to do something that you might need to prove. So he's got the entire thing on tape. He got the entire thing recorded. This guy's complaining about, oh, he's always driving too fast through the neighborhood. And so, I yelled at him and blah, blah, blah. Well, the video shows number one, he never goes over 25 miles an hour. So he's not speeding. He's riding with his kids through a neighborhood, which is totally fine. It's in the middle of the day, so there's no sound ordinance. The dude jumps out in front of him while he's riding his bike, causing him to hit the brakes and literally flip over his own handlebars.
Uh,
He then gets up, the dude gets in his face and starts shoving him. And then the dude like shoves him again, so he hits him. And so like there's this whole bit beforehand where he was literally assaulted before he hit the guy. And then he hits the guy once and he's like, stay down. Like he's basically like, I don't want to hit you again. Stay down. The dude starts to get up again. He's like, well, fine, I don't know. And so, the next day the guy comes out and he's like, well, I'm going to drop all the charges, blah, blah, blah. And the police department was like, yeah, dude, there was no charges. Alan Richson was the one that didn't press charges because you were at fault. And it's just like when TMZ released the video, they released the video that they
They
had
made it look like Alan Ritchson is this big ass
100%.
bully, and
Yep.
I saw the video and I was gonna hit share, but I was like, no, something's off with this one. Left it alone.
Yeah,
I'm so
Yeah.
glad I did.
they did not provide any of that backstory or context, which
Nope.
is
No.
Nope. But they
very
got their clicks. They got their clicks, they got their views, and they made their money. Um, and like you watch it and you look at the way that things played out, and it genuinely makes you wonder if this guy set the whole thing up. Like if he was trying to catch a rich guy in a situation to make a little money for himself. It was really weird, and just to see it like I said, I wasn't when I saw it, I wasn't immediately assuming that Alan Richardson was innocent. Like he could have been a total asshole in the situation, but the problem was there was an entire part of the story missing. You know, you're missing the whole thing. So you got to have the whole story before you make your decision.
that's a huge
But
piece that's missing.
yeah,
Well,
but
I will say, kind of going back, circling back to Project Hail Mary, and earlier, right before this, where Andrew had mentioned Paramount, like the TV versus film, and how with whatever avenue you pick can make a huge difference. I would love to see Project Hail Mary turned into a series, and hopefully a series with a great budget. I think if it were, depending on the right network that picks it up, I mean, whether it's HBO or Apple or whomever, if they could turn it into like a limited series, right? It doesn't have
hmm
to be extensive, but one where they can actually focus on the important details that the book covers. And it doesn't have to be exactly like the book, but if they could set it up that way and really go more into um, the storyline and even the relationship between Rocky and Ryland, and I think Andrew you use a word like the intimacy of it, like a solid friendship. And then Kevin, you had mentioned respect, like their
hmm
relationship was really grounded in respect, and all the other details building around that storyline. And I talked about the stakes and just the complexity of what's going on Earth and why it's happening and the science all around it. I think it would make a phenomenal series.
hmm
I'd love to see that.
I think of it, and I think of the show Dark Matter that we actually all three talked about before too. If you took that production company and made the same show, I think it would work really well, because I think that same level of respect for the material would be there. And it reminds me too. I just you're talking about the things from the story that weren't there. Another thing that they sort of glossed over that they kind of just expected you to pick up without really explaining it was um, when Ryland gets himself knocked out after the planet and Rocky saves him. They don't really explain um, what happened to Rocky, right? It's because they're different environments, and obviously it would be very bad for him. But it just kind of happens, and there's actually a moment in the book that would have fit perfectly in this film because it's kind of funny in that Ryland is trying to figure out how to save Rocky or help him along the way, and he does something that like blows all this stuff out of Rocky's like body, like this gray cloud or something, soot, yeah, comes out of his body. And when Rocky finally wakes up, he's like, "Well, when did you do that?" And he's like, "Well, I did it at this point." He's like, "Yeah, bro, you almost killed me." He's
Yeah.
like, And it turns out like that was basically like his version of scabs. Like his body was healing and he blew out the healing process. If
Oh.
he had done it too soon, he'd have killed Rocky. And so it's actually this funny moment in the book where he's like, "Yeah, you almost killed me," and they left that out, and I was like, that actually for the tone of everything else they did in the movie would have been a perfect fit.
Absolutely.
So,
They also left out the whole part of that scene, which I feel like it just happened so quickly in the movie, but I think they in some ways did a good job capturing the, just the moment where Ryland looks like he's about to die and Rocky, that he's somehow entered his atmosphere, basically.
mhm,
What they left out was that then in the book, Rylan is able to regain his consciousness. Now he's awake again. He then takes Rocky and
mhm,
with all this little strength that he has, that Rylan has, has to carry Rocky, and he realizes he weighs a ton,
insanely heavy. Yeah.
very heavy. But he's the one who ends up returning, taking Rocky back to his environment that Rocky made on Ryland's ship. And that part is significant because Rocky's environment, he breathes ammonia
Hmm.
and like this just overpowerful, like it's an intensely like ammonia everywhere. And that burns Ryland. And that is what
Hmm.
ultimately is why he ends up, he has enough strength to get him to the robotic arm so they could give him the medical aid that he needs. And then he's passed out for I think almost a day and a half.
Yeah.
He's
It's a long time.
so they both
Yeah.
help each other out. And I don't think they did a really good job in the movie covering that because it made it seem like Rocky somehow found his way back.
Yes,
Yeah.
one-sided.
Yeah. And then you get this moment where after that, he's kind of like, oh, well, Rocky is healing. Well, I've got to go do other stuff. And in the book, that is a more, it's a bigger debate for him because they also don't get into just how important it is that they watch each other sleep. They talk about it, but like Rocky is not okay if somebody's not watching him sleep. Like that's a big deal, and he's not okay with Ryland sleeping when he can't watch him. And it's not because he's a weird creeper, right? It's that's his biological imperative that we have to take care of each other while we sleep because you're not safe when you sleep. You don't have a mechanism. Once you're asleep, you're asleep. You don't wake up. And there's some great discussions in the book where they talk through why it's different for each of them. And so like that was definitely missing from the movie too. So yeah, like you said, if they made this into a TV series and you took it doesn't have to be the same crew, but somebody that did the same level of care that they did with Dark Matter, which had a good amount of science in it also. I think it would make a really good series. And maybe that's something that gets done in 10 years, right? Like they got to wait now that the movie's out. You don't want to make it right afterwards, um, you know, but, uh, but yeah, it would be interesting. I feel like it probably won't ever happen, but it would, to me, it would be the better version of the book would be to make it into a series because it's not like Dune dense, but it's dense. Like there's a lot of information in that book that I can see why it was hard to put on film anyways. When you look at the film and it's 2.5 hours long, without all of that, that's a lot of information to add into the movie. But there's certainly some stuff they could have left out. I feel like the whole karaoke scene they could have done without. I loved the little Home Depot scene, but it didn't need to be there. Like it was fun, like it was like humanizing a Carl there, but like it just that wasn't part of the book. As a matter of fact, he made that discovery he made on his own in the lab, not outside the lab with something that he built with Carl. Um, and so yeah, it's just there's things they could have left out and could have put the the more for lack of a better word educational stuff in there. Um, but like I said, overall, obviously they made a good movie because it's killing it at the box office.
One thing I'll say really quick, I just want to represent for it. I'll say it, even though the Ewoks were absolutely not like I did not love the Ewoks in Return of the Jedi, I do think there was an Ewok cute factor because when you see Rocky in his little hamster ball rolling all over the ship and like making fun of him, like why is it so messy and everything, like I just felt like this is kind of cute, and I wouldn't be surprised if like little plush toys of Rocky become
Oh,
like,
they're out. They are
all
out.
right, popular.
100%. In the book, that's not what happens. He has to carry him around.
Wow.
Yeah, he carries him around in the ball at first. Like he's he's not rolling around as much in the book as he is
Guys love
in the
how he
movie.
completely like roommates himself in. Like it's literally like just boom, like just like barges into his place. Like, and as an introvert, I'm just kind of like, damn, that sucks. This alien just wants to be around me all the time. But okay, and but it's endearing.
Hmm.
I think they did a
Yeah.
good job of like making an endearing thing with no face. But so like, yeah, I love anything that makes you earn like earn concern. It rhymed, earn concern. But like, because literally, I was still kind of traumatized. I said, "Don't do it, don't do it," and he breaks the glass, and then he just goes and saves them. And even though it's like burning his skin, I'm just like, "Oh my God." Anyway,
Yeah.
I just wanted to like give love to that. And I think you were saying it was kind of like the ET of our times, like it's kind of like the cute alien, that's just yeah. I don't know. There's a certain sense of wonder, and optimism to the film that I think has been lacking in a lot of other things. Like Sunshine, which we started, has a similar idea of like trying to save the sun. And we will finish it, Saloni. But that movie definitely, I'll put it this way. I think that if you look at the endings of Project Hail Mary versus Sunshine, one has a much happier ending than the other. But they both. I love your face, Kevin. Keep going. Yeah.
That's a difference in the book too. So in the book,
Oh,
we never hear what happens after he launches those probes. The book does not have that moment where she receives the probes and she's on the ice and they have that moment. That does not
oh,
happen in the book. And there's a little more time spent. There's a longer time jump at the end. And has been living with Rocky for a long time. And as a matter of fact, he's much older at the end of the book, to the point where he's like, do I even need to consider going home? He's like, I'm too old for that.
Well, there is that part in the book where Rocky, so yeah, he's on Rocky's planet,
Hmm.
and the scientists over there have created that atmosphere. So that part
Yep.
was accurate.
Yep.
In the movie, they make it more amazing, like
Yeah.
on a create a sea and the beach and everything. But Rocky goes to visit Ryland and gives him the news that he's like, our scientists wanted me personally to share this news with you that your soul is bright
Oh,
again.
that's right. That's right. That's how, yeah.
And I think it was maybe about like 16 years or so was my understanding that had passed since um, Ryland and Rocky had reunited. Ryland takes Rocky to his planet. And now, so there's enough time that's passed. And at one point, I think Ryland even is wondering like what's happened. And then when he shares the news, he realizes that, okay, the Beatles made it,
Hmm.
made their way back to Earth. They were able to use the information, and now Earth, is hopefully flourishing. But yeah, to your point, Kevin, yes, he does contemplate, should I go back? I'm older, but he doesn't look as old. Like he looks like he's in his 50s, I believe, in the book, but he's actually in his 70s because of
Yeah.
the
He says it's been 70 years. Yeah. Yeah. So it's definitely, yeah. The ending isn't wildly different, but it's different. I think from the movie standpoint, they wanted to close the loop on that relationship between him and Strat, right? Because he is definitely in the movie. I feel like he's more forgiving than he was in the book. I think once he has his flashback in the book and remembers what she did, I don't think he's okay with it. I don't think that he's okay with her. Like he's accepted that it happens after a bit. Um, and he also accepts the fact that, if he goes back and saves Rocky, it really means he's never going home,
yeah.
and that's going to be okay. Um, and but I don't know that he ever entirely would in the book version would have forgiven Strat the way that he did in the video that he sent her, you know.
True. Yeah.
So that was more of a happy ending kind of thing for the audience in the movie, and sort of humanizes her character a little bit after the nasty thing that she had to do, you know. Um, but yeah, in the book it is definitely I forgot about that, but yeah, they tell him rather than saying your ship is fixed, they say we saw your star and it's brighter than it was. So whatever we did worked.
Yeah.
Um, and that's all you get. So and for me, at least for a book, and maybe that's the difference too. For a book, that ending works. And maybe in a movie, it's not happy enough. I don't know.
I liked in the book and in the movie, the very last part was accurate. I mean, they both were similar, and I loved how in the end, well, at least in the book, he's like he's visiting Rocky's visiting him, and then Ryland's like, okay, it's time. I need to go to my most important appointment.
Mhm.
And in the book, in the movie too, I don't think he says those exact words, but similarly, the book and the movie were aligned where Ryland enters the classroom and then he turns to the students and he's like, someone tell me about space or time or something. And all these little like younger um,
Mhm.
Iridians
Uridians.
are raising their hands. And I just thought that was very cute that he ended
Yeah.
up doing what he loved, which was teach.
Yeah. 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 It's what he always was a teacher under it all. Yeah. In that moment, I feel like maybe, again, maybe in the movie that was a little more cartoonish and fun. And in the book, maybe it was a little sweeter and more grounded, but it was the same idea.
Mhm.
Same ideas there. He is now imparting knowledge that they didn't have too, right? This is all stuff that they didn't know, even though they built the ship to make this voyage. Um, they don't know all this stuff. They never knew about relativity. They never knew about speed of light at all. They didn't know about all this stuff. So the things that he is teaching to these kids is a whole new information. So he is now educating a whole new planet on stuff that they didn't even know. So it's
And
a
also in the book, he says something like they're they're looking at him like, well, he didn't say it that way. It was actually, and it was said in a better way. But basically, he's their alien
hmm hmm
entering their, and it was a nice. I like that because it's always, when we talk about spacecraft and UFOs, we always think about the other, coming to us, and they may be dangerous and scary. And in this story, he's entering their world. And now, of course, they treat him with grace and kindness
yeah,
and gratitude for him for helping Rocky and helping them save their planet. But it was a nice way to look at it from rather than like us always being, the heroes or we're better somehow. It was him now entering their world, and
yeah.
he's the other.
Yeah, and there's a moment in the book too where they kind of explain how appreciative they are of him. You hear about how all of the other people in the community of that he is staying in really appreciate what he's did, right? Like you hear about Rocky's wife a little bit or whatever. Not wife is probably the wrong word, but mate. There you go. And the other scientists and they just appreciate everything he did so much. And I mean, obviously they're showing that they appreciate that much because they built him a freaking ocean, right? In the movie, but yeah, it's just it feels a little deeper in the book, but it still feels good in the movie.
Yeah, I will say that was done well in the movie. I felt like the visual of that was translated
hmm
actually even better for me than how I imagined.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So cool. Yeah, I think I mean, generally speaking, I think it's fair to say we all enjoyed the movie, and would tell anybody to go see it. And I think I honestly, I think it's telling that you would go see it a second time, especially because that's something you don't do. Like if me or Andrew were like, "Oh, I'm going to go see it a second time," you'd be like, "Oh, okay, it was, that's what these dorks do." But like, if you're going to go see it a second time, that's telling to me. And I think it is a very complicated book to turn into a movie. I think at least from what I have read, The Martian and this would have been complicated to do, and they've done a good job both times. I think if they're going to make Artemis into a movie, I feel like that one is a little more of an adventure. So I think it'll actually translate a little better overall and be a little easier to do. But it's definitely not the easiest subject matter to translate. And I think they obviously, like I said, the box office says they did a great job. So we may not see, a ton of Oscar nominations or Golden Globes or whatever. But I think, at the end of the day, I think Ryan Gosling was the right guy for it. I think he did a great job. They cast the people that they needed to cast, and visually it was absolutely impressive.
That's right.
Yeah. Cool. Well, then I think since we have all said our piece, we all like it. We want everybody to go see it. With that, I will say thank you to everybody at home for watching. Thank you for listening. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.